Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. So, are we good to move on to Mike's topic, which is a very closely related discussion about the SERP and what may happen if the American I'm gonna blow it here.
Innovation and Competition Online Act or something.
Something, yes. The one of the two major antitrust bills, which we can just call ICO or ICOA, which sounds like Alcoa, the company. We can call it ICOA. It's a bill to limit the capacity of so-called gatekeepers, of which Google is one, to self-preference, meaning to advance their own properties above those of rivals or competitors. And so, Mike, talk about what you discovered this week. And you wrote a great analysis piece that published this morning on this topic.
So I was looking, there was some comment online about furniture sales and Google showing new image results around furniture's sales. And so I started doing some furniture searches, and on the search, I think it was cheap furniture near me, I started seeing in the organic mobile results what I call a local card within each website result and the local. So for every website in the organic search results, below the ads, below the pack, and below, say, Yelp, for every local website, there was a little card that was sort of abbreviation of their business profile with their business name and their address and a little map with a pin on it. And as you scroll down, every organic listing had one of these cards. And if one of the organic listings had multiple locations in the distance of the query, then they had a scroll area with multiple cards. You could see 1.5 without scrolling across, and if you could see the rest of the location. So, and then as I was looking at it, I thought this is a new test result, never seen it before. It was only visible on a very limited search query. I couldn't find it for any other products. Clearly it's a test. And I was thinking, God, with all the eyes on Google and their self-preferencing, would they really have the courage, I thought in terms of testicles, but would they really have the courage to insert more local self-preferenced results in the organic? And it struck me that it wasn't so much that they were going to expand local results, but that this is likely or possibly a test to see how they could integrate their knowledge graph into their organic results if they were forced to get rid of the pack, which is one of the threats of the American, Innovation and Choice Online Act, otherwise known as ICOA, Self-Preferencing Act. If they're forced to get rid of the pack at the top, how do they respond? And this result struck me as a potential response. It has problems. It's not very aesthetic. It takes up a lot of room. Doesn't give the user a lot of information, but it does do what Google likes to do, which is keep people on Google with another click instead of them going over to the small business website. They then go directly into the business profile for that particular business. So I thought it was an interesting test, one that I think it might be some form of this might be what the search result looks like. But bottom line is, even if it isn't, I think the article that Rand wrote 2 weeks ago is very germane. It's that these laws are coming, or some form of these laws are coming. They're very likely to impact the results and what we do as marketers. And I think everybody needs to be aware and prepared for potential changes in the SERPs, including the 3-pack going away.
So just to
President.
Just real quickly, so if you want to see what that SERP actually looks like, Mike includes screenshots and the whole. You can download a PDF featuring the entire SERP in the analysis section of the Near Memo website. So that's where you can get a look at what he's describing. So David, go ahead.
I was going to say, as president of the Tinfoil Hat Society, is it possible that Google is introducing what they know to be a substandard user experience as a data point to show just how badly this would affect the consumer experience on Google for local searches?
Well, that's not entirely conspiratorial, because they did something like that with news results in Spain before they eliminated them. I believe it was Spain. So when there was then early on, there was a big push by a lot of the European governments to get Google to pay news publishers for their content. And Google said, except in cases where there were just tiny little snippets or you could have a headline or something. And Google said, we're going to be forced to get rid of all this content or strip away the offending elements, images, descriptions, and so on and so forth. And they showed what those pages would look like. They did a test where they showed what those pages would look like, and they were just not desirable. They were just terrible from a user experience standpoint. So what you described is not entirely out of the question.
We don't know. It's a test. Obviously, a very small percentage of searches it's showing up on, but it was shocking to see and hard to envision what the purpose of the test is if it isn't your theory or my theory. But although I suppose they could want more surface for local.
Well, so they've done as an alternative. They've done some stuff in Europe that may be rolled out here if this passes. One example was the comparison shopping engine inclusion of third party, in their shopping carousel, the inclusion of third party comparison engines in those results, which have been controversial and problematic. So instead of just showing Google ads or Google product related content, they have added third party directories in there. And they did a version of that for a local result.
They did in France, I was going to say, with SoLocal and a couple of others.
Right. Yeah. I didn't remember the country, but it was the exact same treatment where they were putting third party directories in there with individual business results. And the interesting thing there is that it gets them back into the kind of arbitrage world that they tried to get out of with the local pack, meaning where the directories were grabbing the lead and then reselling it to the business owner.
I also don't know. I also don't know that solves the to me, it doesn't solve the innovation portion of the goal of this act. However, because Google's still going to be picking from a oligopoly of winners in terms of who is at a large enough scale to do a data partnership where these results can be returned in that form, right? So, if you're starting a local, whatever, BordeauxPlumbers.com directory, Google's no way are they going to do a deal with you to feature you in the local results alongside of SoLocal. So,
Mike.
I was just going to say that this result that we're seeing, I don't know if you remember, David, back, I think it was 2008 or 2009, they had a similar product where they inserted a little map pin below right in the organic results. Maybe they included the phone number. And this looks sort of like the evolution of that. It's like, and as we've always said too, Google doesn't throw this stuff away.
Right.
They just keep it at the ready when they might need it. So interesting test and interesting times.
My thought, though, just to add another comment, is that they could preserve a version of the local pack under a new anti-self-preferencing regime if they got rid of the Google Map, the local finder and Google Map, and they just linked to business websites. In other words,
that's right.
They could put some of their GBP content on that top level, reviews and whatever else, but then the click goes through to the local website. I think that might be a viable solution for them that would preserve much of the existing experience, but they would just remove the Google Map backdrop for it.
Totally agree. In fact, I had a back and forth with Luther Lowe about this probably 8 years ago, at this point, 7 years ago, back when he was running those focus on the user quote studies, end quote. He was just adamant that no, users expect to see Yelp if they click reviews. And I'm like, I'm not actually sure that's true. If the user wants to know about this business, they probably are more interested in going to the business's website. So I think that this is an idea. I'm not certainly the only person to suggest this, but I think the idea has been out there for a while, and I'm not sure it would necessarily make Yelp happy, but I do think it would satisfy this zero-click search, self-preferencing scenario pretty well.
Yeah, that wouldn't make Ruth Porat happy, though, because they would be selling less ads and they'd have less ad services. She's the CFO, by the way, who has instilled some amount of financial discipline in Google and made them the amazing profit engine that they are. And I don't think that they would do that. For two reasons. One, hubris. They think their results are better, faster. And two, it's not consistent with their economic
Well,
needs.
the small business website very often, although improved from a decade ago, is going to be a bad experience for the end user. So I think
Google
that's
knows so
that's a
much
given.
more about Google knows so much more about the quality of small businesses websites today than they did 10 years ago. All this
It's
work
true.
around incorporating page speed into the algorithm and the user metrics that we know they're looking at, even if they say they're not, I think they could simply reward small businesses with better web experiences. They could probably even detect if they're integrated with some third-party ordering system where
Yeah.
they know it's going to be a good transactional
Fair
experience. So
point.
I don't buy that argument in the year 2022 the way I would have in 2012.
Yeah. Okay. Fair point.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.